The Big Al Podcast with your host, Al Bishop, unfiltered and uncut.
Cool. Shana Power, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for your time. Training a little bit, I guess, and running multiple businesses and all sorts of things. So thanks very much for your time and welcome.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Only a pleasure. Cool. Shana, I think where I like to start with a lot of the fighters is just the early days. So if you could talk us through how martial arts specifically all began for you.
I've always been athletic, so I played a lot of sports in school, and I started a karate background, but it didn't last very long at all when I was very young, maybe like 5 or 6. But that's where my martial arts ended there, and then I carried on with just normal sports in school. I was very driven though. I always wanted to be a professional athlete of some sort, but that didn't really materialize into anything, especially after I'd left school. So I decided to study personal training, and while I was studying, I met Norman at a social event, and he just introduced himself and explained like who he was and told me about 5 Militia, and this was about 7 years ago already. And he said like if I'm interested, not all gyms are like Virgin Active, so give it a try and come take a look at MMA and what the community is about and the gym's about. So I did. I rocked up on the Monday and I never left, and that's when I started to learn about mixed martial arts, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling. The school was very young at that stage still, but I was very fascinated in the beginning, and I think it just grew and grew. So I started trying everything. Was in the amateur class for the Muay Thai, general class, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then the hunger to compete started, growing, and about 3 or 4 years later, I started asking Rich questions, and then I just spoke to him, and we managed to get myself a boxing fight, and then it just progressed from there. Like kind of after the boxing fight, a year later, I had my MMA fight. A year later, I turned pro, and here I am.
Okay. How was that walking into an MMA gym? Obviously, it's quite like a male-orientated sport, especially at that time. What was it like for you? Was it tough? Did you face a bit of adversity, or was it frustrating, or how did that pan out?
It was very tough. I feel like I was prepped for it because in school I was the only girl in the boys soccer team from a very young age, so all the way from primary school, and then only till about the age of 17 did I start the women's soccer team in school. But I was it didn't make sense then why I had to go through what I had to go. Like I enjoyed the sport, but growing up, the sexist comments and taking everything and all the nasty things the boys had to say. But then walking into Fight Fit, it was like I kind of felt like I was at home again, like it didn't feel any different. But there were plenty of adversities. Rich, I was more Norman's apprentice in the beginning, so I was learning and studying under him. But Rich and I didn't see eye to eye in the beginning. It was a lot of hard work to even get Richie's attention to even look at me in terms of training and coaching me. Sure. I think it was only like 2 years later did he even, look in my direction and offer a word of advice. And it took a lot of hard work and putting in the hours for him to even agree to start training me and investing in me. So yeah, it was tough, but steel sharpens steel, and I've only learned from it and grown from it.
Sure, it sounds a lot like Ronda Rousey's story as well with Edmund Taverdian. She was also grinding it out in the gym, and he was like, "No, go away." She's like, "No, can we do pads?" And he's like, "No, go away," until it eventually came.
Pretty much.
Do you look up to people like that, like Ronda Rousey?
I do. I've followed her career from the beginning. I read her book as well. She's been an inspiration, to a lot of female fighters. It was just sad how things have ended for her. Sure. And in her career. But there's a few professional women mixed martial artists that I do look up to and that inspire me on a daily basis. So, but Ronda was definitely the first one. I mean, she was the first one that any any female athlete spoke about, and she kind of her career started in the UFC kind of when I started my fighting as an amateur.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, she was someone that I drew a lot of strength from and looked up to going through my stages as an amateur. But now, you've only got to look to yourself. It's very hard, especially with how the women's division's going now. It's like chopping and changing.
Sure.
But I mean, it just shows how the sport's progressed and the athletes are coming up, and how women's MMA it's a sport to watch now. It's not just sloppy. It's very technical and entertaining.
That's a funny thing that you say. I've never really come outright and discuss it with somebody, but it's if you watch different weight divisions, for me personally, it's funny how you can pick up different things from weight divisions, and then if you look at the women's weight divisions as well, like for me, to watch a heavyweight, you can never really understand the technicality of what's going on. It seems more like just brute, When you watch someone like Joanna Jędrzejczyk, for example, from a technical standpoint, it's just like water. It's fluid emotion, and to see the way she throws her techniques, and for some reason, for me personally, I can understand a lot more technique being thrown by women fighters. It just seems to be like there's a bit more emphasis on it, almost, or like if you want to study a technique, for me, it's easier to watch women fighters than to watch men. You know what I mean? I don't know why. Like, I can't explain. I can just understand. Like, if someone's saying, throw more from the shoulders, I can see that more in women fighters than I can in men. And it seems like you always get a very good technical fight when it comes to women. I don't know if it's the development. People have focused on the technicality so much, or it's just the way it's progressed.
I feel like, especially being the only female in Fight Fit, and training with males all the time, we have to be technical because we can't use strength. So I think that's what forces us to be more technical and smarter, to be honest, when we fight. I feel like I'm constantly trying to outsmart the guys in the gym because I can't match them physically, and obviously their technique is also really good. So we've got to come from a different angle. So when you're watching it, when we get to fight and be in the cage, I think then it's just ingrained in us from the get-go that you've got to be a lot more technical than just get into a scrappy fight.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense, I guess. Let's just look at your amateur career. Obviously, you fought through Fight Stars in amateur. You tore it up there. You were undefeated. That's correct. And eventually became a champion at Fight Star. What was it like at that time as a woman amateur fighter? Were you getting fights on the daily? Because I know, like, if you glance through your amateur record, there's a lot of like cancelled bouts and changed bouts and things like that. So
my amateur career was very frustrating for me. It was very difficult for me to like keep going. EFC hadn't even opened their doors for females when I was an amateur, so Fight Stars was all I had. My first amateur fight, it was heartbreaking. I was scheduled to fight, I think her name was Natasha. I could be mistaken, but anyway, I was supposed to fight her, and I was halfway through my first weight cut. We were 3 days out, and Grant phoned to say that she had pulled out from the fight. And that was my first experience now trying to get a fight for MMA, and I just remember being so heartbroken. I'd put blood, sweat and tears into my camp, and this was supposed to be my debut, and just 36 hours from making weight and all of that, it got pulled from me. So that's how it started for me, and that was my career for, I think I didn't even end up fighting that year until October when I fought Iris. So I was still training, but it was very difficult to find me an opponent. So I ended up taking the fight with Iris 9-10 months later, and that's when my amateur career started. So I fought Iris. She was, the girl to beat in Fight Stars when I started, and I beat her in decision. Then I moved on, and they found me another female, and that was early the following year in the February. I beat her in 29 seconds. Then I had scheduled fights, but same process, making weight, cutting, and the day of weigh-in, I would get a phone call and say your opponent hasn't arrived, or your opponent's been injured, or some story. So
Garmin's broken.
Yeah, I was and I even like I remember standing in the gym with Rich on, and I was like, I actually don't know what to do. Like, I'm doing all this training, and it's not light training. I'm like getting beaten up every day, and like, what do I do with that?
Sure.
Like, why am I doing this if there's like no way to showcase what I've learned or to test myself? And he was like, just keep pushing, it's fine, you know, it's normal to go through these waves. And it was like literally not even 2 weeks later, I was scheduled to fight at GFC, so I had a fight there. Then they scheduled me for the title about 2 weeks later, and then straight into EFC. Then phoned me after I'd won the belt. The belt in amateur. So amateur was tough for me, like I said, in terms of experience. That's why Rich and I changed to pro, just because I was an amateur for 2 years, but I had nothing to show but 4 fights. You know, in 2 years you should be racking up the fights and just trying to get as much experience as you could and can. And I just wasn't getting there. So when Graham phoned to make the transition to pro, we just decided, you know, well, win or lose, at least you're still getting experience, and the chances of you getting more fights is a lot higher. So yeah, it was good. It was fun while it lasted. Became the first female bantamweight champion in Fight Stars. So it was just another tick on the checklist. So yeah.
Okay. And then, sorry, how big was the step up from being a champion at Fight Star, obviously through all that adversity, and then onto the big lights of the EFC?
So I remember I was sitting in the gym and Rich walked through and he was like, I've just received a phone call from Graham. So I wasn't thinking anything, because Rich will chat to me like about the guys and who they're fighting. And he was like, they've signed Kirsty and they want you to fight her. And I just remember like my heart dropping, and I was like, there was excitement, but I was also like, you know, oh, this is getting real now. So he was like, are we going to take the fight? So I was like, well, it's up to you as a coach. Like, do you think I'm ready? Had the discussion. But training with Rich, whether you're pro or amateur, there's no difference in training. So it's not like there's a separate class for amateurs and a separate class for pros. You need to learn to train like a professional from the get-go. And the only difference between an amateur and a pro is literally the experience and the time in the cage. But in terms of training and putting in the hours, it should be exactly the same. So I think Rich has made our transition a lot smoother from being an amateur into like to turn pro than a lot of camps do. Obviously it was an international as well, so there was a lot of hype around it, and I'd never fought one, and you know, internationals had just come to EFC. It hadn't been like, you know, a normal thing to have so many internationals. So the transition wasn't hard in terms of my camp and my training. It's not like I was training more or harder, but it was just the preparation, feeling like I was fighting one of the best, you know, and just the mental games with that, like feeling like I have to be 100%. I mean, Kirsty was a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I hadn't even got my blue belt yet. I'd only had 4 fights. She was 38. I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? So it was a big mental game for me, but like I said, the transition was very smooth, and we're fortunate that Rich has his processes and systems in place that we can do it like that, easy.
Okay. I remember quite clearly in your first fight, just before you entered the cage, you almost took a moment to kind of pull yourself back, to bring yourself into the moment. There was a bit of talk from your camp that you were quite nervous for the fight. I mean, understandably, it's a lot on the line, you know. And all eyes were kind of on you, this prospect that had torn through the ranks. What did you feel like emotionally leading up to that fight, and obviously till the time you had to stand across from her and get ready to have a go?
So emotionally during my camp, I was an emotional wreck. I mean, but I find like it's important that we get nervous, and especially being a female, you know, we have all these emotions. You know, like getting a beating isn't normal. It's a choice, of course, but you know, it's just we're fighting our own bodies in a sense. So I normally get quite emotional through a camp anyway. I see it, like we find systems and processes, and I normally break about 3-4 weeks in. Emotionally, I have a good cry, pull myself together, but then I just come up, and then I feel untouchable, invincible. I feel like I've been through the worst, and if I can do it with my teammates and, get through a training camp with them, then I should be fine in a fight.
Sure.
Walking out, when I got to EFC, I also had to travel to Cape Town. I just remember standing behind the curtains. Kirsty had walked out, and it was like my legs were shaking. I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to do this now. And here it is, the 6 weeks of everything that I've put in has finally arrived. Curtains open, my song came out. I was super nervous. Obviously we get undressed into our fight gear, say goodbye to the teammates, and we went into the prep zone, started with the Vaseline, and I remember walking into the cage, and then I have my little ritual that I do just before. I just write my record and, I do my little thing, and as I get into the cage, and when I got into the cage with Kirsty, there was just this calmness that came over me, and the nerves all disappeared, and the gate closed, and I just had like this sense of clarity. There was just watching her, like there was just nothing that I felt like she could do that I wasn't prepared for, and just watching the reactions when I was landing my strikes. All my strikes were landing. I just feeling great, the timing, and it was one of my best fights, and we always strive for perfection as athletes, but we never get it as mixed martial artists because there's just so much to learn. But yeah, that's what happened. So when you saw me, I was really nervous, and then all of a sudden I was super calm, and it was just so awesome to be so calm in that environment.
Yeah, it's such an interesting side, because it's, I don't know, I mean, obviously I'm not a professional fighter, so I can't really understand, but it's something I always like to watch, is to see how fighters enter, to see where more or less their mind is. And it was very interesting, because it's one of the first times I've really seen somebody actually like stop and pull themselves back into the moment, like forget about everything else. Because I think mentally, especially for a fighter, there's so many opportunities for your mind to fall into doubt, and I think that's one of the hardest roads to face as a fighter, is that. And especially in that moment where you've left your teammates behind and you're kind of crossing the border into loneliness, there's this
in there by yourself.
Sure, that gap there's such a big moment for your mind to start telling you the wrong things, And I think it was great the way you literally you could see you kind of just stopped and said, okay, take a deep breath, everything's gonna be cool, and it was really cool. And look at the way the fight ended. It was insanity, you know what I mean? It was all of a sudden, here you are, you had arrived, Then moving on to your next fight, it was still a great display, but what came out of that was you received a bit of slack for the third round for what, I don't know where these people come up with it, to be honest.
Running the comrades.
Yeah, getting on your bicycle, or whatever people want to call it. How did you feel about that? Obviously, I mean, people who know the game know that there's a very good reason for doing. It's kind of setting up, trying to get where you want to be in the cage, or where you want to be against your opponent, or if you're getting pressured or you're getting put under too much pressure, you got to move around. And how did you feel about the criticism for that?
You've got to understand that, and that's for spectators and fans, is that as much as you guys are all in there watching for your entertainment, like rugby, like soccer, you've got to know how to play the game. And yes, great for you guys if the knockout happens in 10 seconds, and great for these fancy submissions, but MMA is a point game, and it's not that we like to play the point game, but you need to make calculated decisions in split seconds. My first 2 rounds, I had won. I mean, and there was no running.
Comfortably,
Yeah, there was no running. I could see Nicole was hurt. I could see it in her face. I'd split the inside of her mouth open with the up kick. I could see the tears forming in, like the frustration, the utter frustration. And obviously that then, it builds your opponent's confidence up, because for me, so I could see like she was just getting frustrated. And then, I mean, in the break in that, before I came out for the third round, Rich said, like, you've won the fight. Do what you have to do you don't have to do anything devastating. Like, you can play it safe if you want to, but you've won it. And, also it's mentally, as much as it's physical, being in there for 15 minutes is a very, very long time. And you can't switch off for a second. You can't even blink because something can happen in that moment. And I wasn't running from Nicole. I mean, I wasn't in trouble in a sense that I was trying to get out of there. It was just the fact that, she was trying to put pressure to close the distance, and I was just trying to get out and move. I like being on my feet. I feel like one of my strengths is my footwork and the angles that I use. And I don't see why I had to engage in a clinch. It wasn't like it was a tough call or a tight call. It wasn't like, I could have gone either way. The fight was going my way regardless. So how I won it, people are always going to find something negative to say. Then you've got other people that can find and look at it from a technical aspect and see what I'm doing. But it's always the people that, the keyboard warriors that, have never even lifted a finger or gone to gym, and they've got a lot to say about us athletes that are actually training. So yes, like I said, obviously for us, when we step in there, if we can finish our opponent within 15 seconds to 5 minutes, we would love to do that. We don't want to be in there. It's a danger for every second we're in there. But you've got to be smart, and that's what I received the information from my corner, and that's what I did. So, also to beat someone like Nicole for me was a massive thing. I mean, all her accolades and, from being overseas, and she was the world amateur champion, how many Jits comps she had won. People don't look at that, and then it's just people that are negative, and they just have nothing better to do with their times than to criticize. So, waters of a duck's back, you've got to move on. And I mean, like I said, you win the fight, you win the fight. It doesn't matter by how much.
Sure. And for me, there's another two parts to it, because obviously the first fight, we see like the spinning back fist lands flush, and people start to realize, okay, you've got this crazy stand-up skill, we want to see you finish. So in their minds, they've got like this predisposed outcome of how the fight's supposed to end, so they don't want to see, you not going for the kill. Is it fair to assume that in 2 rounds you had thrown quite a lot and had come to the realization that to put this girl away is going to be very difficult? So instead of risking a whole lot of stuff by just throwing everything you've got in the tank to try and put her away, and hopefully it works, or just try and keep your distance, keep scoring, and be out of the way, is that fair to assume that you had seen quite a bit that it's not going to be easy to put her away? You've
got to look at both sides. Like I said, we all want to finish the fight, but Nicole was resilient, and so personally, I am more of a technical fighter. I'm not there to hit your head off your shoulders. I understand that we've got to have gas tanks, and that,
sure,
if you don't finish them in the first round, but I've gone out there balls to the wall and my gas tank is finished, I've still got to get through another 10 minutes
sure,
of being in danger. So I am more calculated and technical. I was hitting her. I threw kicks that landed, elbows that landed, and she just kept coming forward. So yes, it was like in that second round, myself and then my cornerman, we could see that we weren't going to put her away. And for me to then give it my all in the last 5 minutes and to make a silly mistake and lose, like, is it worth it in a sense? Like, I'd done all the work, and then to become complacent or, just to try be overpowering and all of that in the last round, to be submitted or to be knocked out myself, I've got to sit with that. So like I said, people look at it and think it's just 2 people in the cage. There's a point system. You've got to be smart. You've got to be a technical fighter, and that's just how we played it. So everyone has a lot to say, like I said, but we can't... we've just got to move on. You're either going to appreciate it or you're not.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, one of the big naysayers on that fight was Amanda Lino, which was then your next fight, which was at the time the inaugural female flyweight championship, which was going to be up for grabs in Sun City. A massive moment, and then the negativity came and the weight cut scenario happened. So obviously the way that all came out and when it all came out was a very strange thing, you know, and people were jumping on your back and jumping on Richie's back and just generally jumping on the entire FFM's back, for a matter of fact. And, you know, it was unprofessional and it was this and that, and like, you know, always the people that don't really know what they're talking about or what's really happened. So maybe just talk us through that whole scenario and how it all played out.
So my fight with Amanda was confirmed not long after I'd beaten McCall, and obviously I knew I was in line to fight the title, or fight for the title, as I had, you know, my fight with McCall was for contendership. I didn't expect it to be so soon because I didn't feel that anyone in the women's flyweight division at the time had kind of earned their spot to be fighting me. You know, I had to win 2 fights in a row to claim that spot, and all of a sudden, you know, my opponent was just, you know, handpicked. So Amanda was the one. They wanted me to fight Isabella, but Isabella was fighting in different organizations and she had come off a loss. So the other person that could have been was Amanda, and she had just beaten Jackie in March. So that was announced and we were fighting in October. That was everything I've been working for. So, you know, dreams were starting to become a reality. I was one step closer. Also kind of, you know, overwhelmed with being there, you know, to have only, you know, being a thought and a dream to now actually the announcements, seeing the promo videos. I mean, it was everything I'd wanted and wished for and trained for. And leading up to Amanda, it was one of my best camps. I was feeling good. Technically, I was, you know, I felt ready and prepared to face her. My weight cut was my best weight cut. I mean, I had cut a lot more with McCall than made weight, so I was even way under. I had gone to sleep the night before on the 14th of October, knowing that I had 800 grams to cut the following day, which was or the 13th, which was the 14th of October. And being a female, my menstrual cycle started. So being a female, and if you know what happens, your body goes into storage. So
Sure.
There's absolutely nothing you can do when a woman's body does it. We kind of shut down. We just like, you know, we cannot give anymore. So I'd woken up at 4 o'clock that morning, and I started my baths, which should have only been technically 2 baths, and then I would have been on weight. Started at 4 in the morning, and after like 30 baths, and we tried everything. Salt, Epsom, hot baths, wraps, my normal procedure that normally works for me. And you could just see me by every bath get smaller and smaller and smaller. But every time I stood on that scale and not even a gram had dropped, I started crying. Like, if you don't know what it's like to be tired, because now I hadn't slept, hungry, dehydrated, one step closer to actually weighing in and then being able to hydrate and fight for something that you wanted. And after every bath, not even a gram. Like, it's heartbreaking. Like, if you haven't done it yourself, I don't think you'll ever understand what I went through. And, you know, all of a sudden the time just runs away. All of a sudden it's way in time, and people are asking where you are, and you're like, I don't understand. I haven't even dropped a gram, and I've been bathing for 6 hours. Now, even though I wasn't losing weight, my body was still being dehydrated over a certain period of time. So I had badly dehydrated myself. Obviously, I was adamant to make weight because I know what people are like, and I know it's unprofessional not to make weight. And I'm someone that, you know, also like gets fed up when athletes don't. So we went to Graham and we were like, this is the scenario. But obviously I had to do medics. And the doctor checked me out, and I have had pulmonary emboli before. So 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with 28 clots in my lungs. I nearly died. I was in ICU for 10 days, and they just told me that I was lucky to be alive. Now, pulmonary emboli is caused by dehydration, or the contraceptive pill, or flying, and that's also one reason I can't control my cycles, because I can never go on the pill. So my cycle's kind of something we kind of know when to expect it, but with cutting and all of that, it just messes up our hormones. We can't be completely sure about it. And we spoke to Graham, and the medical doctor saw my history, and he looked at me and he said, there's no ways you're fighting. And he said, the chances of you having formed a clot is extremely high, and the only way we can test for that is by going through a CAT scan, but there was nothing there in Sun City, so
Sure.
they had to rule it out. And so I could have formed a clot, which no one would have known about. I could have stepped into the cage for everyone else's entertainment, and I could have been dead. And people don't realize that a clot can shoot at any point, and that could have shot to my heart or my brain, and within seconds I would have been dead. So yes, I got a lot of slack, but people don't like to do their homework, and it's I think it's also unfair with how the statement was released.
100%.
People had traveled and they'd come to Sun City, and Amanda was looking forward to it, I was looking forward to it, and then all of a sudden, before weigh-ins, not even half an hour, it's like breaking news: Power fails to make weight. But they didn't word it in a sense to explain to people why I didn't make weight. And that was the frustration, is why I got so much slack, is because there was miscommunication, and it put me in a negative light off the bat, and I wasn't even able to explain as to why I didn't make weight. So people, automatically jump onto the computer, and then, they had to say vulgar things, and I had to take a lot of things, but people don't understand what I went through to get there. Like, it wasn't a choice on the day that I was like, you know what, I'm going to miss weight, let me have a pizza. It was heartbreaking for me. It was devastating for me. My world was spinning. I couldn't understand why this had to happen to me. So it's part of the sport, but I think that's what hurt me the most, is that people can't be neutral. And I guess that comes with the territory. So it was devastating, and it was hurtful, but we move on.
Yeah, sure. It's one of the strangest things about fighting, and specifically modern day MMA, is that a lot of people can understand the game, a lot of people can understand the training, and very few people can actually understand the mindset of a fighter, So a lot of people, obviously, like you say, it comes out, you miss weight, and automatically the way it's worded, and that's it, it just ends, the picture of you miss weight, and people just assume the worst, you were slamming Dunkin' Donuts all night, in Sun City.
Because I've got nothing better to do in my life. I wish I was, to be honest.
Sure. The thing is, what people don't realize is that everyone's like, oh, but what about Amanda Lino? Nah, she's there, her family's there, her friends are there. I'm like, but hang on, so do you guys think Shana Power went alone?
Yeah, but
You know
that
what I
was
mean?
my thought.
Exactly.
It's like I had my family, there's about 15 of them.
Yeah.
I had my grandfather of 70 come and watch me.
Sure.
I had sponsors that had flown out from all over. I had, my own fans that had rocked up, my own team that had rocked up. So that was also my thing. And then also they still called her up to make an announcement of how she feels. Why not give me the opportunity to be like, you know what, Shana, please explain, because it fell on me 100%. Explain as to why you didn't make weight. Give me the opportunity to clear the air, which I never received. So I had to take that for a full 24 hours before I even released a statement as to what had happened. I had to read those disgusting comments. It was all about Amanda, and I was apologetic off the bat. I mean, I had to meet Amanda before they even released it, and I was like, Amanda, I'm so sorry. I know I've been in her shoes. I haven't not been in her shoes. It's not even that I had to imagine. I knew that. And also, for her to be fighting for the title, her dream was also there. Her coming up. Two people wanted this more than anything, and all of a sudden it was taken away from us. So I don't have answers for that. I still had to sit, and that was the hard part, is like, my weight cut wasn't wrong. I couldn't go back to the drawing board and go, these are things I need to fix. I was sitting there going, why? Why did this happen? Why has my career come to this point? Why was I, enter EFC in such a devastating manner for me not to fight for the title? I've got all these questions. I question my own faith and my own sanity, but I don't have answers. But everyone is so quick just to, kick a dog while it's down.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, it was all about Amanda, but no one wanted to see my side.
Yeah, sure. And it's the other side of that coin is it's not something. I mean, fans, especially like the fly-by-night fans who only really tune in on fight night, don't understand that an entire fight isn't what you see then. It's not just a weigh-in and a fight. You know what I mean? There's 12 weeks before that. There's everything that goes on. There's injuries that happen in that time that you've got to deal with. You know, there's getting your weight down, dieting right. And most people don't even know that. I mean, in your corner for a weight cut, you've got probably the best without a doubt, the best in South Africa, possibly one of the best in the entire world. You know what I mean? His athletes don't miss weight. They don't do that. You know what I mean? And that automatically, you know, people that know, when they hear, like, if you've got Rory Diesel in your corner and you've missed weight, something's gone very wrong. There's something very wrong. You know what I mean?
100%.
So people have to realize these things as well. There's a lot more to it than just missing weight.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you're going to be a fan of the sport, understand what goes into it. Understand that within 6 weeks, we miss birthdays. We miss, you know, if you've got a family, you miss kids' things. You're tired. You don't have a social life. You're miserable. You're sore. You know, these are things that, yes, and we do choose it. So you can turn around and go, well, you chose it, so live with the 100%. But just then respect what you see when we do, you know, when we get to entertain you for a little bit. But go back to it. See what we go through.
Sure.
Don't just jump on the bandwagon there and then.
Yeah, sure, man. It was such a strange thing, and the sad part is it got even stranger from there. I mean, I remember sitting at the time thinking, you know, watching the build up. You guys, there was quite a few of you guys from FFM there. JP Bays was fighting. Don Madge. There was for some reason I go straight to the picture of Don Madge and JP Bays on the water slide.
Yes,
I don't know why. You know,
we
like
had a great media day there. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So it was like, and then you had to still sit there. You know, like when I was playing rugby. A small example, on my birthday. We had a bit of an incident on the train going down to Durban, and I took a lot of heat for it, and I couldn't play. So I had to sit there and watch my team play. You know what I mean? I mean, this was a passionate rugby school. First team rugby was like a big deal, and it was horrible. It was like one of the worst sporting memories of my life. You know what I mean? And I sat there thinking about it, and I was like, oof, I can't actually even imagine what you now have to go through. Sit there in the same line with a crowd of people. You know, some people will be like, we're sorry about what happened. Other people will be like shooting you death looks, you know, and things like that.
That hear them announce it again after time that the fighter being called off due to me. And it was, I mean, tears were streaming down my face, and I don't say this to look for sympathy, but I remember myself, like, you know, I was sitting there, my mom even looked at me, and I just, like I said, I just didn't have answers. You know, like, I wish there was a reason. And that's what I don't have. And that's why I wish I could give people an answer, but I can't. I'm still searching for these answers. So I had to sit there, listen to Shane announce time after time that the women's flyweight title had been called off. And I still had to try to be supportive. Chad was fighting, JP was fighting. These are guys that I had a whole camp with. You know, it was supposed to be our night of victory, and it was burning inside. Like, it was horrible.
Sure. And then obviously the next step got a little bit stranger. The title became like null and void, and people were kind of asking, well, you've missed weight, surely the next step is just to find another date. And then that didn't really happen. And then you got a fight with Jackie. Do you think that all of that whole like emotional background, and you know, I have to say the weirdness of just all of a sudden not fighting for the title affected you on fight night when it came to your fight with Jackie?
So yeah, for my title fight not to be postponed was also like, I didn't understand that. I mean, there's plenty of fights that get pulled off and get postponed. So, you know, like I said, Baldwin got injured, Zulu Boy got injured now, and JP's fight's been postponed. I don't understand why I wasn't given the same kind of procedure. Like, they don't do it. It's not the same process. And you know, like I said, I also felt like I was the only one and is deserving to be fighting for the title, as I was the only one that had beaten two internationals and 2 fights consecutively in a row where when Amanda had fought Jackie, she was 3 kilos over, and Jackie had made weight, and that was her fight that, you know, gave her the title shot. So there was a lot of questions, as one, a lot of frustration for me, but I had to bite the bullet and you know, accept what the organization had decided. So the next one was Jackie, and they were going to use it for me to earn my spot back into title contention. And you know, before I even start, you know, going back, it's not because I'm making excuses, it's just you have to go back to the drawing board. You have to see what went wrong, otherwise we don't progress. So firstly, Jackie, you know, she was the better athlete on the night. I can't take that away from her. She was well prepared. She stuck to her game plan. For me, you know, like I said, she won that fight fair and square, but now I had to go back and go, okay, well, what did I do wrong? Why did someone, you know, a local, beat me, and go back to the drawing board? And I feel like I didn't give myself the respect I deserved and honored myself enough to have taken the time off with what happened to Amanda. I was so desperate to get into people's good books again that I took the fight instead of actually going, you know what, I just nearly died, you know, I'm still alive and at least I can fight again, but let me take the time off to recoup and rebuild and to make sure I'm healthy, and I didn't do it. So my ego got involved, and I've always believed as a fighter, especially in our sport, is that you need to remain humble, because when you start battling and fighting with your ego, that's when things like this happen. So I made an egotistical decision, and that got the better of me, and I was like, well, let me show everyone as to why I am great at the sport. And I took the fight with Jackie, but when I made weight, well, it was a catch weight, so I don't, you know, before people jump on that, it was a catch weight fight.
Sure.
I made the catch weight fight that we had, you know, that we had agreed on. But making it to the scale had affected me emotionally, because I didn't get to the scale last time. So I didn't realize how much it was going to affect me by the time I got there. And it threw me for a curveball there and then already. So starting to rehydrate and all of that, my mental process wasn't the same. I was just like, it was like, not that you had won the fight, but there was like, okay, well, I don't really have to do anything else, if that makes sense. Like I've actually beaten what I had to beat, which was the scale. And yeah, so it did definitely, I agree with what happened in October to have affected me for this fight, and I wasn't the same person. So, and that resulted in me losing to Jackie, which a lot of people were surprised about. But you know, that's the lovely thing about the sport, is it's so unpredictable. So yeah, Jackie did what she had to do, and she came out on top, and I'm learning from it.
Yeah, sure, and I think Jackie really took advantage of a good opportunity for herself. You know, she really impressed. She looked impressive. She looked powerful. She looked strong. You know, with all due respect,
No, 100% she did.
She just really, like, she saw an opportunity, and she's grown. She's not the same fighter she was. You know,
not at all.
So she's, you know,
not at all.
And then, like you said, that's the beauty of the sport. You know, it'll call you out if you like. You know, if you're not 100% there, you're not going to get the results you're looking for.
You can't lie about it.
Exactly. So, where are you now? What's kind of in the immediate future for you? Like, are we looking at other fights, or what's the scenario?
So, I've been forced into a situation where I need to rest. Not rest that I'm not training, but we need to fix things, and I need my body to heal from what I put it through last year. You know, people also just want to say, like, weight cutting, you know, do you really have to heal from it? I just read this week that a Muay Thai fighter at the age of 21 passed away and died from weight cutting, and that's just one to name a few. I mean, it's just happening so often these days that weight cutting is becoming a serious thing. So I need to honor myself now, and Jackie kind of forced that. So, you know, I don't want to be that fighter that's chasing, you know, like so desperate to get back in there to prove a point instead of actually being ready to get back in there. So I've decided to take a few months off to fix things, to allow my body to heal, to get my weight down naturally. I'm still progressing, I'm still evolving, I'm still on the mats. I don't know if there's going to be a fight anytime soon for me, as it is Jackie and Amanda are fighting for the title on the 10th of June in Durban. And yeah, I don't think there is anyone else for me. I have kind of fought all the flyweights that there are. So I'm just, like I said, it's not that I'm chilling and not doing anything. I'm just out of the limelight for a little bit, so that when I do come back, people remember, that I am a great athlete, and when you fight for the right reasons, you get to witness great fights.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm training, I'm building businesses, I'm looking after myself, for fighting isn't forever, so that I have something to fall back on when I do retire, but it is not anytime soon. So yeah, we'll look at it maybe near the end of the year, maybe the last bit of the year. We'll chat to Graham or see what other opportunities there are. I am planning on going overseas this year to go and train, and just to, broaden my knowledge and to see other female athletes. I'm one of the pioneers in this country. I don't get to learn from other females.
Sure.
I don't get to ask them how their bodies respond to certain things, and I want to understand that. I want to not be narrow-minded. I want to grow and evolve, and I'm striving for perfection, even though I've got a long road ahead of me. And so that's where I'm at.
All right, awesome, man. Well, hopefully we'll see you this year in the cage, ready to give us a show on how far you've come. And one of the last things I just want to ask you, obviously you mentioned quite a nice thing there, which is something I've always said to people, is that you are a pioneer in South Africa. What advice would you give to young female fighters coming up in the system?
It's an exciting sport, so don't be disheartened. Our MMA in this country, especially for females, is very young. It's in its infancy stage, so if you are up and coming, you'll probably also be one of the pioneers. The sport's young, so keep striving, and anything's possible. And I'm hoping that especially like the four of us that have joined EFC and have paved the way, give young female athletes that are training an opportunity to grow, and hopefully they can go overseas a lot sooner than we can and fulfill their dreams. So just keep at it, and we're doing the best we can, so hopefully we'll see them soon.
100%. Shana, thank you very much for your time, and we wish you all the best. We know you've got a lot of new young businesses that you're looking after.
Yeah, come have a coffee at Titanium Cafe.
Definitely.
Let's do that.
I hear it's the best coffee in town.
So do I.
Cool, man. Thanks so much for your time, and all the best, and hopefully we'll see you back in action very soon.
Thanks, Alistair.
Thank you.